Hey, I'm Anne, owner of Champagne and Stars Event Decor. Welcome to And I Like Large Parties. Join me as I chat with amazing women business owners in the events industry, some that I've worked with and some that I can't wait to work with. We'll be sipping cocktails while discussing their passions, hurdles, and accomplishments. You're going to love it. Thanks for listening. All right, today I'm chatting with Jewell Rowlands of Oasis Coordination. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad that you decided to accept my invitation and be on the podcast. Super cool talking to you. At the end of the podcast, just as a heads up, since we're having conversations and cocktails and we're drinking gin and tonics today, very refreshing. I'm going to ask you if you had to create a signature cocktail or even a mocktail that embodies the vibe of your business or even you and all that you bring to the business, what would that be? So just hold that until the end, give it some thought, and then we'll circle back. So why don't we start with you telling me all about your business and how you wound up getting into it?
Yeah. So I feel like every time somebody asks me this question, they never believe my answer, which is I started this business by accident.
Okay. It happens.
Yep. I used to coordinate weddings for friends and family members because in my immediate circle, there was a lot of just chaotic weddings.
Okay.
Of like people were just expecting things to happen. And, you know, you go to enough of those and you're like, I cannot attend another one of these.
Something's not right here.
Exactly. And so, no one knows what's going on. No one knows what's happening. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. So I started coordinating for friends and family as like their wedding gift. And one of them decided like, hey, you did such a good job. We would love to leave you a review somewhere. And I was like, a review? You don't have to do that, but okay. So I like made this really jank little website and I was like, here, you can leave your review there.
Yeah.
And it just blew up from that point.
That's awesome.
They were telling everybody, and then I guess this review was getting a lot. They were sharing the website. It was insane.
Wow.
And before I knew it, I had a whole other business that I was working on. I was like, this is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much how Oasis started. So we focus in day of coordination and partial planning.
Okay.
We don't offer full service planning yet, but we might.
Okay.
We might soon.
Okay. So can you walk me through, and we were chatting a little bit about this before we started recording, explain to me just the different levels of service between a day of coordination and event planning.
Yes. Yeah. So event planning focuses a lot more on the early logistics of planning an event. Things like where, when, who, those big questions that you have to get answered first. Like, if we think about a couple who just got engaged, they are looking at like venues. They're trying to find caterers with food that they like. Those are the big things that event planning focuses on like, all right, let's do contract review. Let's make sure, like, if you have zero direction as to what you want this event to look like, that's where an event planner starts taking over and like guides you through that decision-making process.
Okay.
And a lot of event planners offer a day of coordination service as well. And then day of coordination focuses on more so the couple that knows what they want. They have an idea. They've done a lot of those big portions of planning already, but they need somebody else to do it on the day of. And so, they don't want to be the ones expecting vendors to arrive. They don't want to be the ones telling vendors where to set up on their wedding day. Because a lot of time, again, if we're talking about a wedding, if you're the bride and groom, you really do not want to be telling people what to do that day.
No,
you just want to be focusing on
enjoy your day.
Yes, on getting married.
That's right.
And partying with your friends and family.
Right.
And so day of coordination focuses more on the couple that knows what they already want. They just need someone to pass the baton to for the day of.
Okay. So I know that you work with a team, and I feel like just in following you on Instagram, I feel like I've watched your team grow and expand. Why don't you take a little bit of time and just, give them some shout outs, tell me how many people you have working with you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Oasis would be nothing without the team, honestly. They are all so talented and in so many different ways. And I think that's part of what makes Oasis so cool. And so we have 5 lead coordinators. I don't think that's including myself, but who knows at this point. We have 5 lead coordinators, so people who take their weddings on their own. And then we have about 20 people in our rotating day of staff.
Okay.
And so you're right. Over the course of like being on social media with Oasis, we went from just me and my sister to this whole team. And it's really, really cool to see that growth, not just because like we built it, you know, but also because we get to watch people shine in their arenas.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's awesome. It's just so great. I love it.
And so tell us about your sister. What's her name?
Gabby.
And so I loved, you recently posted something, I don't know, about a month ago. It looked like the two of you were starting some kind of a venture within this business. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So Gabby, aside from being a very talented lead coordinator, is also a very, very talented like designer and stationery designer.
Okay.
And so she was doing it like pretty much just for me and my clients of like, hey, this person needs menus. Are you okay designing them? We would connect via email and then she would take it from there.
Yeah.
But it started to grow to the point where I was like, you know what? I feel like you should merge with me. Like, why don't you just come under the Oasis umbrella? That way that gives you more functionality and that gives me another resource for our clients because we have a lot of people who are choosing like day of coordination packages, but they need like partial planning help. And so we're directing more people to that partial planning arena because it's what they need. And one of those things is stationery. It's one of the most frequently forgotten things.
Wow.
Which you would never really expect.
No, I wouldn't have.
Yeah. And so I was like, Gabby, why don't we merge companies? So we like signed the paperwork. We did this whole thing. We called it the merger, the official Oasis merger. And so her stationery business, the Chaos Edition, came under the Oasis umbrella. So that's what that was.
That's fantastic. So is she your younger sister?
She is.
Okay, I thought so. I thought so. You just, and you're the oldest?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, and I have a sister 3 years younger. I love her. Like, she's my heart. And I was picking up on the big sister vibes, with you. So I think that's so cool that you get to work together. I love that.
Yeah, it's great. She drives me crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Tell me about the name.
So I feel like most experiences of wedding planning that I have been a part of, my own, my friends, there is just this pure chaotic 6-month period where everyone is flying off the handles, parents, bridesmaids, groomsmen, everybody's freaking out. And the bride doesn't know what to do. The groom doesn't know how to help the bride. And there's like no resource there for them. And so just drawing from that experience, I was like, how can I make this less chaotic? And what's less chaotic than an Oasis? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so just having like a safe place, I kind of just describe it as like, look, I am your resource. This is your safe place to vent about all things wedding, to talk about any problems with your wedding or with your wedding party. Like, this is your safe place to plan your wedding. And that's pretty much how Oasis Coordination came to be its thing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want it to just be me. I didn't I know that like the owner makes the business in a lot of different ways. But I wanted the business to be bigger than me and to incorporate personalities that might be different than mine. Like our lead coordinators, my sister, she might be related to me and look like me.
Yes,
but
very
she's
much
so different from me. And so, you know, I wanted the Oasis brand to be bigger than just myself.
I love that.
So it was really cool just to be able to like pick the name and then I didn't realize what I was doing when I picked it, but in retrospect I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, it definitely fits. Yeah, and I love your explanation. It's just peaceful and calm and tranquil and lovely. Like that's what I think of when I think of an Oasis, and you're providing that calm and that peace and tranquility to your clients. So I think it's fitting. When I was I'm going to start this business, I'm brainstorming what am I going to call it, and I came up with AMD event decor because Anne Marie DeAngelis, and it was my husband that was like, that's a little boring, right?
And you're like, how dare you? But thanks.
Yeah, because I'm just looking around at what other folks are calling their businesses, and that seems to be the thing. You name it after yourself or some variation,
right?
And so I really started thinking about what it is that I love, and just parties, and I love The Great Gatsby, and I love the parties in the book. And there's a line in the book about men and women coming and going among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. at one of Gatsby's parties. And I said, that's it.
Yep.
Champagne and stars. So I'm really grateful that my husband stepped in with, some unsolicited advice. Not the first time, but he's oftentimes right. And I really appreciated that guidance. So yeah. I love the posts that you have on Instagram. Would you say that Instagram is the social media platform that you're using the most?
Yes, definitely. I personally don't like social media.
No, same.
For my own life, I
such a common thread amongst all of the business owners that I speak to.
Yes, yeah. It just feels like another thing to maintain a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'll have my Instagram for my memes, because I'm a sucker for a good meme.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just look, Instagram for me in my head is business related. So I just kind of roll with that.
Yeah. I love the photos that you post of the weddings that you are part of. It's just ethereal and fun and just classic. And it just really, I think the pictures that you post of your couples, it's amazing. The other thing that I like about your posts are when you and your team are in t-shirts, boots on the ground. I can tell that you've worked up a sweat and you're doing something. One of the questions I want to ask you, and I'll just go ahead and jump right to it since we're getting into that area, some common myths about event planners, right? So when I think of an event planner, and this is before, I guess I was naive, before I actually started working with event planners like you, I had the vision of, Jennifer Lopez in the wedding planner, right? And she looks completely perfect from head to toe and never breaks a sweat. And she's got a belt and
not a hair out of
place, not a bead of sweat, belt with, safety pins and tissues and bobby pins. And that's the job.
Right.
I know that is not
definitely
all
not
that the job entails. So why don't you talk to us about some common myths, set us straight. What does your job actually look like at an event?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I do the same thing. When I started getting into wedding planning, I was like, I want to be like J-Lo.
Yeah.
J-Lo is my standard. I will always be like J-Lo. And you work a couple of events and you're like, I am nothing like J-Lo. Just the sweat, the tears, the blood sometimes,
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we do in the beginning of the day is setup, management. Hey, making sure hair and makeup is on time, making sure that bride is not freaking out, making sure everybody has what they need.
Right.
Which for us entails a lot of movement. We're just running around, setting things up that needs to be set up, getting in touch with the people we need to be in touch with. It's a lot of moving. And I think sometimes people think that wedding planners are always stressed because we're always moving, or we're supposed to be the ones calling all the shots. So we must be freaking out in some form or another. And I was talking to Gabby about it and she was like, actually, I think that is wildly incorrect. That the skill that wedding planners need is to be able to think in high pressure situations, not to almost reject a high pressure situation. Not that things aren't high pressure, but we've learned and have taught ourselves out of necessity to be able to think on our feet no matter what on earth is going on.
Right.
And I think that is probably one of the biggest myths, is that people think we're always stressed or we're always on high alert because we have to be, but no, we just learn how to pivot.
Sure. So this vision that we have of Jennifer Lopez as the wedding planner, do you know wedding planners like that? Or really is that so far from the truth that you don't know anyone like that?
I feel like everyone's got their own style. And sometimes I feel like when you do your job properly as a wedding planner, more often than not, that's what it looks like. We just don't look like J-Lo, but there's a calm of listen, I know everything that's going on in this room right now. I know every person that I need to be keeping tabs on, and they're here, they're ready. Let's do this, and there is an element of that when planning is being properly executed. I think the wild card that happens is when vendors are acting like the planner doesn't exist. And so we're even though everyone has their own style, I feel like that is the one thing that just will set any planner off.
Right.
It's listen, man, we're supposed to be a team. We really got to start working like one. We all have these things to do and we all want to be the best that we can be for bride and groom. So I think even aside from the style of planning on the wedding day, that is what ends up being the make it or break it point for any event.
Gotcha. So what is the process? A couple, how are most of the couples finding you? Is it Google, or I know word of mouth it goes a long way.
Yes.
I've seen that with my own business. So how do they find you, and what does that process from beginning to end look like in working with them?
Yeah. So most of our, wow, I got so tongue-tied there.
It's okay.
Most of our couples find us either from Google or Instagram or vendor referrals. Vendor referrals are huge for Oasis. And it just ends up working really well that way. And so they'll inquire, we'll have like our consult call, we'll do our thing. They'll sign their contract, reserve their date. I immediately start reserving a team for their wedding day. So I know who the lead coordinator is, whether that's myself or somebody else. And then our staff can like self-schedule their days into that wedding if they want to work that one, if they know they can be free, whatever that looks like. So we have multiple check-in calls throughout their planning process. We have a lot of resources that we give our couples as to like, hey, here's like a general timeline of when you want to get these big things done. And then throughout those check-in calls, we usually have them once a month, once every other month, depending on where they are in their planning process and how far their wedding day is. And then we just help them organize things from there, make decisions from there, provide any guidance. But once we hit the 90-day point, that is where it's like full blown, hey, let's get everybody's contact information. Let's reach out. Let's make sure they all know that there's a coordinator involved, because that does something to people when they know that there's somebody else besides bride and groom that are like keeping an eye on everything. And that usually is how we end up, like the build up before wedding day. Then on the wedding day, we have our team of 3 that is there. They are there all day, from whenever hair and makeup starts between like 9 or 10, all the way through to the end of the night.
That's a long day.
It is a long day. It is a long day. So lots of coffee, lots of snacks, and lots of food.
Yeah. When I was getting into the event decor business, I had some family and friends say, well, you're really good at planning parties. And I said, no. There is a difference between being organized and when you're planning your own party, being just, adept at that. I want no parts because I'm listening to you explain all of the things that you're doing for these couples, and I'm feeling the stress for you. I would much rather, you want this lamp and you want this chair and this couch. You tell me exactly where you want it. I will bring it to you, and then I'm leaving. Right. And then that's where you folks come in to make sure that everything is running smoothly. So that is quite a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. And that's, I think that's what makes you what you're worth to these clients that you have. So that's great.
Yeah, because we're kind of, and not just me and Oasis, but just planners in general, we're the catch-all. So if something goes like a little bit askew and we need to figure out a solution for it, we're the ones doing that. Yeah. And then we are the ones asking people for help, like, hey, we have to make an adjustment here. Is this cool with you? You know what I mean? Right. And that responsibility falls on us, where it's, again, that skill of like, hey, you got to be flexible and you have to learn how to pivot when things don't always go according to plan, because it will happen. Always. There's always something. Oh, yeah. But
I'll let you go ahead and take a sip of your drink while I talk to you.
This is actually very good considering the water bottle.
Oh, my gosh. Right. So, yes, I transported this gin and tonic pre-mixed in my daughter's water bottle. It was amazing. Mom of the year. I just thought, it would be easier to travel that way. So that's what we're referring to. I was just listening to you on the Jay Rana show, and I love the interview. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand. So he's in the entertainment aspect, and then it sounds like he's also into the planning aspect as well. He is. One of the conversations that you had was about budget. Yes. And I thought this was funny because, so when you and I worked together, initially you had a couple, they were looking for a particular style of candle holders. Did you find me on Instagram? Was I following you? I can't remember.
You had followed me. Okay. And then the only thing I remember is I was like, man, this lady is really liking our stuff. Yeah. Because you would the reactions that you try to be supportive. Yes. And I was like, this is amazing because you don't always see that. I was like, you know what? Immediately, this is one of my frienders. Like, she'll support me on Instagram. I'll support her too.
And you do, and I appreciate it.
So, tit for tat. Yeah. we have to look out for each other.
Definitely. So you have a wedding coming up, and we were talking about a lounge that this couple had wanted, and I spoke to them, they picked out some things, and then ultimately in the end, they wound up having to cut it from their budget. And I thought about that when I was listening to the financial conversation that you had on the Jay Rana show. How important is budget, right? When you're sitting down with clients. I would imagine it's huge, and I'll let you speak to that. I know from my end, it's, people, they reach out and they say, hey, I want this love seat and I want this rug and I want 50 candles and I want this and I want that. And I'm okay. Right. Yeah. And then they get sticker shock when they find out how much these things actually cost. And then there's also delivery. I had a gentleman yesterday looking to, he wants to rent something for Saturday. So this was last night, right? So this is quick.
Right.
And the delivery price was $47. And I'm squeezing this in between another job that I had booked, right? And he was telling me how high he thought that was. And I, okay, so I'll let you sit with it. You decide what you want to do. But those conversations, they get awkward.
Yes.
And they get difficult. And I always like to say, listen, I will give you, the moon, the champagne, and the stars. But you have to pay for that, right?
Yes.
So walk us through, what are those conversations like when you're talking budget with your clients?
Yes. I feel like my background being in finance, I've gotten very used to talking about money, which I've realized getting into the event industry that people are uncomfortable talking about money. It's like something that they play very close to their chest. They don't like people to know how much they have, how little they have, but they're all obsessed with impressing XYZ for whatever reason. And so for me, I'm like, look, is this in your budget or not? And I feel like
very direct.
It's one of the reasons why my sister is very different from me, personality.
You complement each other, right?
Yes, because she's more like, well, maybe you should consider. I'm like, what are you doing? That's just my personality that way. But a lot of times, even with Oasis services, people I had one person years ago ask me to sharpen my pencil.
Oh.
And I was like,
what does that mean?
It means discount, please. Begging for a discount, please. And I, at that point in the business, was I was pricing based on where, distance to my house and all these things, fluctuating pricing.
Yeah,
which works for some people, but it did not work for Oasis. And it still does not work for Oasis.
Okay.
And so I crafted our packages to be able to, look, the price is the price. It's on the website. It's public information. If it matches your budget, awesome. I would love to talk to you. If not, I'm sorry, but I'm not the one.
Sure.
And I feel like having those conversations is hard for people because they're like, well, I want you. And you're like, well,
this
you
is
can't
what it
afford
costs,
me.
though.
Yeah. And I always have recommendations for others, and just again, pivot.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I love you. I love your personality. But if you can't afford to pay for me,
right,
we can't work together. And there have been a couple of situations where, I've had people reach out and they're like, look, this is an emergency. And I reserve those moments for those discounts for those types of moments of I see that you need the help.
Yeah.
I will take that cut and I will help you, but I can't do that for everybody.
No.
Otherwise I would not be in business.
That's right. And starting out, you're so desperate for the clients.
You're going to pay me real people money?
Right, right? Oh my God, this is a legit business. I'm doing this and I'm getting paid. You will lower your price. And sometimes it's, in the beginning, it's beneficial.
Right.
I was just talking to a photographer, and one of the things that she had recommended, even though she said a lot of photographers might balk at that when they're starting out, just shooting things for free.
Yeah.
Because it gains you the exposure. And if they like what you're doing, that word of mouth is everything.
It goes so far.
It really does. And you find yourself at the beginning lowering your prices because you just want the booking.
Yes.
Because from that, you can potentially book something, someone else.
Right.
And I had a moment last night when I was talking to this gentleman and he was explaining his rush order for Saturday. The delivery is too much. Should I adjust that? You still have that voice in the back of your head. Should I come down on that for the booking? Ultimately, no. Yeah, I told him it's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to draw that line.
Yes. And there's this planner that I follow. Her name is Taryn Blake. incredible.
Yes,
I have
I've seen her
a
stuff.
mentor session with her for I try to have one every year. That's like my thing.
That's awesome.
And so I had my first one with her last year, and she like posts a bunch of stuff on like her business page and her wedding page. But one thing that she posted on her business page that her husband said to her that has just been ingrained in my mind is that no is a full sentence. Sometimes you just need to say no and let it sit.
That's right.
Because a lot of times people will be like, you know what, it is really unreasonable. Like, you know, for in that delivery fee sense of like, you know what, yeah, I am rush ordering this. Of course she's going to charge me for delivery. Like, you know what I mean? And those are the types of things that like a lot of times people self-correct. And they're like, oh, she runs a business. I can't just like, we can't negotiate bills.
Right. Yeah. It's so hard. You try to maintain that level of professionalism, and you know, this is not your first career. It's not my first career.
Right.
So you know, we're very used to just always being uber professional.
Yes.
And you know, of course, we want that to carry over into our business.
I even had a client once who, you know, we did everything, and it was one of those like situations where you know, I never should have taken this client in the first place, and it happens few and far between.
Right. Yes.
But it happened in like the early season of Oasis. And just like so chaotic, which is hilarious with Oasis Coordination and the absolute chaos that this wedding was. Like I had to make her seating chart. I had to do a bunch of things that were nowhere near my responsibility for her to do based on the package that she purchased for me, or, you know, the service I was providing for her. And a week later, like I don't hear anything from her after the wedding day. A week later, I get this long email about how she feels like she overpaid for services that were not delivered or not rendered. And when I tell you, I had this moment of like, I'm from Adams and the Boulevard. Let's go.
Immediate reply.
Yes, literally just the stretch. And you're like, all right. But I did have to explain. I was like, actually, I undercharged you based on the things that I had to make sure happened on the wedding day. I should have charged you for that, and I let it go because I'm not trying to ruin your wedding day with an invoice in your inbox the next morning. Response back from her, like pretty much trying to rebuttal every statement that I made. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let this go.
Yeah, at that point,
this is, I said my piece. I said what I needed to say. And as a business owner, it would be detrimental for me and my business for me to say anything else.
That's right.
And I left it alone. And I have not, and she threatened me with all kinds of bad reviews and all this stuff. Have I ever gotten that review? Nope. Nowhere to be found because she knew I was right.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those situations where you're like, look, I hope this never happens to me again, but I am glad that you lived through it once.
That's right.
So that you know how to handle it if it ever comes up in the future.
That's when you save your email response. And you have that in the event you need to roll that back out for someone else. You've got a template now.
Right? Just keep that in the back pocket.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is that, you know, largely everything is positive. You love your clients. They love you. You know, we do hit some of those hiccups every now and then. But, you know, what is it that you're enjoying or really loving the most about this business that you've started?
I love marriage. Like, I am so passionate about the covenant of marriage. I think it's so important. I think it's so vital to our society. And weddings but like you look at like all the movies about weddings, they're this huge production about the wedding being perfect. And a lot of times people forget that the engagement period is for you to prepare for your marriage, not just plan your wedding.
I never thought about that until you actually said that.
Yeah, like the engagement period is for you, like as you plan a wedding, all kinds of things come out. Money, how you both handle money, your family situations, like so many life things come out of like starting your life together. That engagement period, you need that to prepare for your marriage because you're hoping, Lord willing, that you're only getting married once. So all these things do need to be addressed before you sign the paper. You know what I mean? And because the covenant of marriage is that serious, yes, you want your wedding to be so beautiful and be like the most memorable thing of your life. But you got to focus on your marriage too, because that's what happens after you leave. Like the wedding will be done in 12 hours. Like, Your marriage, that's what starts at that point. And
that's very true.
Yeah, you don't want to start it with this like big shallow experience of like, oh, I got this to impress people, or I didn't even really like that, but I paid $1,000 for it. Like, you don't want that to be the memory that you have of your wedding day. You want it to be like, wow, this was the day that this huge chapter of my life started, and I was prepared for it mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, right? Like whatever that looks like, because it's different for everybody.
Right.
Like that's what you need to use your engagement period to prepare for. And so offering a service like Oasis does, where it's partial planning, coordination, we remove a lot of the wedding planning stuff from that engagement period. So they can focus on that part. Because it's so important. And then if you forget about it, you notice, you know, like you're going to get frustrated with each other during the engagement process. And it shouldn't always be that stressful. There will be moments. There will always be moments.
Right.
But it's so much better to like focus on preparing yourself mentally for marriage while you're planning your wedding, instead of only focusing on this 12-hour period and then wondering like, why do I feel so sad afterwards?
Yeah. And it goes by. I mean, it's a blink.
Yes.
Yeah. It is, the day is over so quickly. You make a lot of really good points. Do you have to have some of those conversations with your couples? Like I'll have someone rent, you know, I don't know, I want this arch, I want these balloons, I want this couch. And I'm thinking to myself, I never in a million years would have put these things together.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm thinking they don't go.
Right.
That doesn't match well. I would much rather do it this way. And it's taken me some time to step back. It's not my day.
Right.
Like whether it's, you know, a private party, a corporate event, a wedding, shower, whatever it is, it's not my thing.
Yes.
And so you're just there to provide the service, and you have to just be at peace with that. If they want this rug and this couch and they don't match at all, that's what you deliver.
Right.
How do you have that conversation with your clients to try to remind them of some of the important things during this engagement period as you're helping plan that wedding?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times with like the planner-client relationship, there's a lot of venting that happens.
Okay.
Like, okay, well, I didn't know my mom wanted this, so we're going to make this adjustment to accommodate what my mom wants, whether the couple hates it or not.
Yeah.
And so I find myself, I don't insert myself into any situation, but what I say often... What I say often that kind of covers that area is your wedding, your rules.
Nice.
If you feel uncomfortable doing something, don't do it. Because the only thing you'll remember is how you did that and you felt really weird doing it. And now that memory is associated with your wedding day.
Yeah.
Like one of the big things that people omit now is like the garter, because it's awkward to do in front of your grandparents and your family members.
I've done it. Yeah, my own wedding.
You're like,
done it. Yeah.
What? Did that. And so most people are like, oh, well, I really just want to stay away from that. And then they'll have a family member that's like, oh, you're not doing that? That's weird. And that just like hits the wrong chord with a couple. And they're like, maybe we should consider it. I'm like, do you feel any less awkward about that?
Right.
After that comment was made? Like, no, I think it would still be awkward. Then don't do it. You know, like there is a balance there of your wedding, your rules. Be respectful and take in the opinions of the people that matter to you the most, like your immediate family, your parents, your siblings, right? Because they know you very, very well. But random Joe Schmo that just like walked in off the street, found out you were getting married, and all of a sudden has all these opinions about what you're doing, you don't have to listen to that.
That's right.
Your wedding, your rules. Do it the way you want and tell me how you want it, because I will be the bad guy on wedding day if I need to be. And that usually ends up covering a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And like you said, it's a nice blanket statement. It gets a little dicey when you're talking about, and I've only experienced this a couple of times where it's someone else's shower, but their mother is paying for it. So they're picking out what they want.
Right.
And I'm dealing with them up until the point where payment is involved, and then all of a sudden it's switching to
another point of contact.
Another person because her mother is footing the bill. When you in your business, I mean, I know what it used to be. You know, the bride's family tended to pay for things. That I don't think is true anymore. It seems like an all hands on deck. A lot of couples pay for their own wedding, but when you've got family that is contributing to the cost of the wedding, that seems pretty hard to navigate, to have that it's my wedding, it's my day, when someone else is, they feel entitled to having an opinion, right? Do you find that?
I do.
Yeah.
Which is why I invite them onto our calls.
Okay.
Because one thing that is very easy to develop is a degree of emotional intelligence. And so if I'm able to like read somebody's facial expressions or body language, that puts me at an advantage as a planner to be able to say like, okay, if I'm talking to the mom and the mom is saying XYZ, but I'm looking at the bride and she's like stiff or looks uncomfortable, I know that she doesn't totally agree with what her mom is recommending at this point. So I'm going to try to find the middle ground between them and present that as my first option, even though I already know what the bride wants. I already know what the mom wants, but I'm going to help them find the middle ground so that this doesn't turn into like a big thing between them.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be fighting with your mom leading up to your wedding. Like that's just not fun, you know? And so I feel like there is this degree of like, all right, you want to be involved? Come to the check-in. Like, here's the Zoom link. Bring your mom. Bring your parents. Have them there. Have them in the room. I don't even really need to see them. But if I know that they're like chirping in your ear while we're talking, I know that they have a different opinion, and then I'll try to find the middle ground for you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good strategy.
Listen, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
It ends up being so much better, and then they can find that middle ground and just like everyone is happy without the bride or groom or without the family having to be upset about what's going on, you know?
That makes for an awkward wedding day for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because then the first thing they do is look over at their parents when something's happening, and you're like,
yeah, see, I told you that's why I didn't want this.
Exactly. And you're like, no, stop.
Yeah. So, how long have you been doing this? When was Oasis born? I don't think we talked about that.
Yeah. So the first official wedding that I was hired to do was in 2018 for my old English teacher's daughter.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so, we actually just celebrated like our 5-year in business.
Okay, great.
A couple days ago. So I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's a milestone.
Yeah. But I missed it, but
yeah.
We were busy.
Yeah, that's okay. Busy is good. In the 5 years that you've been in business, what are some things that have just surprised you about being a business owner? It could be good or bad, things that you just really weren't expecting when you started this. That, now being in it, like I said, for 5 years, you're like, oh, wow, like I just didn't expect that this is what I would have to deal with or that this would happen. What are some of those things?
I feel like I have a different perspective on this because I came from a very entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
So my dad has owned businesses. My mom has owned businesses. Like we just grew up in this environment of like, if you're providing a service, if you're providing a product, this is how you handle it. Because I grew up watching my parents do it. And so, which doesn't happen for a lot of people.
No, it doesn't.
And so I feel like I went in with like both eyes open in that sense. Like I knew there were going to be trouble people. I already had an idea of how to handle it. But the biggest thing that I just like had no clue about was how much people were going to guilt me for my pricing. I've had many people inquire about like day of coordination. And they're like, oh, well, we just want someone to show up on the day. And we wanted it for like $600. And you're like, $600? But you want me to just show up when you guys show up? How am I supposed to know what's going on? But they don't understand that because they don't know. They won't know if I don't tell them, you know? And so it's one of those things that like they would make me feel bad for like, oh, well, that's way too expensive for me. And they'll just like after that, they'll just be quiet, expecting me to say, well, I'll meet you closer to your budget. And, and it's this weird like standoff of no, I'm not going to give you a discount because if you can't afford me, I mean, it sounds a little rude, but like that's not my issue.
No.
That's your issue.
Not everybody is the right fit.
Exactly. And we don't all have to be the right fit. One of the things that my friend Fareed, who's also an entertainer in the industry, Baseline Productions, he's great.
All right. I'll have to follow.
Yes. Yeah. He's awesome. He told me once, he was like, there's room for everybody at the table and we can all eat, but we don't all have to eat the same thing.
That's true.
And it's true. Like someone might be okay doing that for $600, but that's not what my business can do because I know that I can't just show up on the day of for $600 and know what's going on and know how you planned it because that $600 will barely cover my time being there, let alone all the work that I would need to put in before wedding day, And so I think that was like the thing that caught me off guard the most. Can you sharpen your pencil? I was like,
I've never heard that before.
I was like, I wrote that in pen. There is no pencil involved.
Nope.
you know, and just like guilt over pricing. But it's like, look, I might not be the one, but there is somebody else who might be able to meet you at that price point.
Right.
And, you know, of course, there are always situations where I can be a little flexible.
Yes.
But not for everybody and not for every situation, you know? So I think that was the thing that caught me off guard the most.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I feel guilty for like sustaining my business?
Yeah. No, I hear you. And you're transparent, you said, with your pricing. So they know going in what they're going to be getting in terms of services, and they know what it costs. So if you're already out of their price range, why have the conversation? Well, because they're going to see if they can get you to lower the price.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So what would you say are a few personality traits that you think are really helpful for someone that is in the event planning industry or thinking about going into the event planning industry?
I think emotional intelligence is huge because there's a lot of nonverbal cues and nonverbal conversational things that happen via email or while you're in person with a client or at the walkthrough that you need to be paying attention to, because sometimes the client won't want to say it. Or like their mom will say something and, you know, they'll have a face and you're like, what is that face? Are you not happy with what your mom just said? Is there some animosity there that I need to be aware of? You know, like, emotional intelligence is huge for planners specifically, because that will just get out of control so fast. I think also clear communication and observing are like the big... that trio will make any wedding planner's job so much easier.
Okay.
Because if you're not observing what's going on, something is wrong. Like, you need to be in the room. You need to be walking the room and making sure that people are looking like they're having a good time. If you see people going like this, deductively reason, they're cold. Let's see if we can get the heat up just by like 1 or 2 degrees, or let's get them on the dance floor because then they'll like warm up a little bit and then they'll sit back and be like, oh, thank God for AC, right? Like, those are the things that like a wedding planner needs to be observing or paying attention to for the maintenance of an event. Because everyone talks about like, once you get there, it's a blur, but it's not a blur for your vendors.
No.
We feel every minute of that day because we are always on. We're watching to make sure your mom doesn't look upset. And if we see that from across the room, guess who's booking it? Your planner. And we are just walking straight to her. What can I do for you? Is there anything that I can like take off your plate right now?
You talk about efficiency. What are some, I don't know, tools, hacks for entrepreneurs that you think would really help with being efficient? Because it is so important.
Oh, yes. I have my 2 that I tell everybody.
Okay, tell me.
Time blocking and hire yourself an assistant.
Okay.
No matter what, whether you feel like you can pay for an assistant or not, find someone that can work with your budget and hire somebody to help you. My assistant changed my life. My whole life, because there's a lot of like email work that you get like hung up with, like scheduling, pricing, contracts, countersigning things. And half of that work, when I brought on my assistant now, Desi, and we're bringing on another one too, just because of how Oasis is growing. When I first brought her on, she was like, none of this is like, you're going in circles before you get to the finish line. Like, we should change this process. And I was like, well, do you have any suggestions? Like, I totally trust your ability here. Tell me what to do. And so she put together a system. We learned how to use it. And now, literally, I can send her emails in the middle of the night. She'll log on the next day for work. She will handle it and send me a recap of what was done, what was in progress, what she was waiting on still, and if she had any issues for the day. And that just... the amount of hours in a day that I didn't even realize I was spending doing a lot of this grunt work, because, you know, it's your business, it's your baby. You want to be involved in every aspect of it. And it's hard to let part of that go.
I was wondering,
to somebody else.
That was one of my questions, and you're addressing it now. There is a level of, you feel like you're losing control, you're relinquishing some of that control, but it sounds like it's necessary, and
it is.
You just transition into accepting it, and it winds up being great from what you're saying.
Oh, yes, 1,000%. I don't think I could survive without one now. Just because even when Desi went on vacation for like 7 days, I was like, I don't know what to do. I haven't done this work in years at this point.
When are you coming back?
Yeah, exactly. I knew exactly when she was coming back. Just because she has helped me so much in that regard, and she's bought back my time. Like the amount of money that I pay her bought me those hours back in a day.
Okay.
So now not only can I be more available for clients, I can also be more available for the team.
Nice.
My lead coordinators who might have questions or might need a phone call. Like now I'm available versus before I'd be like, okay, I can meet with you next week if I put you in this like tiny little 15-minute bracket and it has to be a phone call. Is that okay? Like now I have time flexibility and I have somebody else who is helping me manage what I'm already doing. And so those are always the two big things. Time block and hire an assistant. It will feel weird, but you got to get over it.
Good tips. Good tips.
Yep.
I think when I started out, I was using a lot of Word documents and PDFs and spreadsheets, and I kind of put an all call out to some of my frienders. I'm going to use your term, frienders. And I wound up going with 17 Hats.
I love 17 Hats. I use 17 Hats.
I couldn't remember which you had used. I got a lot of responses. Honeybook is one that a lot of people use, and I dabbled, but I wound up landing with 17 Hats, and it definitely changed things. For me, it keeps me so organized, and just the contracts and the invoices, it's just a wonderful
It's so
tool.
easy.
Yeah.
It is so and did you know that you can make your assistant an admin? So they'll be able to see get yourself an assistant.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's perfect.
To help you manage it. Yes.
Yeah. So what is a challenge that you're facing in your business right now? The biggest challenge for you?
I think biggest challenge is like post-COVID wedding catch up. So right now there's kind of like an industry-wide thing happening where inquiries are down for 2024. And not for everybody, but it's just a product of what COVID left behind of like, everyone had to cancel their weddings in like 2020 and 2021. And the COVID boom, they're calling it, is wrapping up at the end of 2023. And so people are seeing a decline in bookings. And to some degree, Oasis is seeing a decline as well. But it's more so just like, okay, how do we get ahead of this and make sure that our bookings are consistent with what we're trying to do here, with what our income goal is, with what, we want our lead coordinators to be handling or our staff to be handling. And just putting things in place to make sure that process is rock solid.
Yeah.
And people, like ease of finding Oasis. So if I Google Oasis, what page do I show up on? Is that the first page? Okay, so does that mean I need to learn SEO and what that looks like? And that process I think it's challenging more so just because I don't know any of it. Like I didn't go to school for any of like how the internet works.
No, I know,
thing,
right?
Like
you definitely get a crash course in all things internet.
Like oh my gosh, I'm barely catching up with Instagram and making reels. Like who knew?
Yeah, I was never on social media. It was a friend of mine that said, "You're starting this business. You have to get on social media."
Right, exactly. Someone just told me I need a Facebook page, and I was like, I need a Facebook page.
I
now
know.
for the business?
I'm on it. I'll tell you though, the nice thing about Instagram is that when you post on Instagram, all you have to do is flip a switch on Instagram, and anything you post there, it automatically dumps right onto Facebook.
Right,
so it's really not. I know that you're super busy. It's really not that much. I
probably should do it.
You'll be okay. It's not that hard. It'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is probably the biggest challenge that we're facing so far is that like, okay, how do we make sure that our bookings are consistent year over year, no matter what world calamity happens or leaves behind?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's just happening industry wide in the wedding business right now too, is that like the wedding boom is ending. The COVID wedding boom is coming to a close, and everyone who was catching up on their wedding, they caught up.
Yep.
And so now we're like dealing with, okay, who's getting engaged this year? How many people get engaged every year? And you're looking at all of these analytics to make sure that your business can sustain itself. So it's a challenge because it's stuff that you never really had to learn before. Because, I mean, honestly, like Oasis was... It was a newborn baby when COVID happened. Yeah. And so when we came out of COVID, we just hit the ground running and we've just been running ever since. Yeah. And we never really had to think about like, oh, what if bookings go down? Because we didn't have that problem.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so I was a teacher, and I decided at the end of the 2019 school year that I was just I needed a change. And so I decided to leave education.
Wow, right before COVID too.
Yes, it was right before that. So I had the summer to, just really stretch my legs, figure out what am I going to do next. And I was looking at, textbook publishing companies, still trying to, I knew I didn't want to teach anymore,
right.
Which I loved it. It's unfortunate, but just the changes in education, it just got impossible. So I don't want to teach, but, maybe I'll stay in that area, in
the same
that
arena.
vein. Right.
Yeah.
And then I got to the point where I don't really want to do that either. So just, some soul searching, a couple of breakdowns, a few conversations with my husband, who is always, my rock. And as much as I'm like, nobody asked you,
right.
I really
You're
value.
like, but I'm really asking.
I
what
really
do you
am
think?
asking, and I value your opinion so much. Please help me. So we had some conversations, and he said, what about, you love parties, and we used to have some elaborate themed parties. Why don't you do something with that? So I wound up taking the time in the fall and even into the new year to get myself together, get all the licenses and everything that I need for the business, started getting inventory, and then COVID hit. So but you know what? And I feel for folks like you that you already had an established business, and then all of a sudden, you just hit the ground running, and then this thing rocks everybody's world. My experience was a little different. I felt like it gave me more time, because I didn't feel like I was ready. I wasn't ready. But that's also that's a thing too, right? When are you ever ready? Like sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah, you're never going to be ready.
Yeah, for sure. But it did give me a little bit more cushion. And then when everything opened up, and like you said, people started having parties and weddings, I felt like, okay, I have amassed an inventory, and I've got a spreadsheet. This is before 17 hats.
I've got my spreadsheet and my Google Doc.
Yep, I've got my PDFs.
Don't come for me.
I'm good. I was ready to go. So it definitely did throw a wrench in things. And hearing you talk about the changes in the wedding industry, I feel like I need to be a little bit more in tune myself to what does this look like now in 2024. So you've actually given me some food for thought.
Yeah.
Because it's been good. And it's going to dry up a little bit.
Well, it doesn't have to if you prepare.
All right. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on it for sure.
Yep.
How about advice? So, entrepreneurs starting out, particularly in your business, what are some pieces of advice, or one really good piece of advice that you would have for them? Maybe something you wish you had known that you've just learned in the last 5 years doing business.
I think competing but not comparing is very important. Like, your biggest competition will always be yourself, and it should always be yourself. But I think just as a product of social media, you look at all of these other people who are doing what you want to do, and you're like, how on God's green earth are they handling 150 events a year? And I'm over here struggling with my 20 events a year. How did they do that? How did they make that work? And a lot of people are very open. Like, they don't gatekeep information, and they'll be like, well, here, like, this is what I do. This is the system I use. And you'll try it, and it just doesn't work for you in your business. And you're like, I'm the problem. I have no idea what I'm doing. This influential person that I really respect their business. I really respect their acumen. Like, I love what they're doing. I did what they did, and it doesn't work for me. And it's one of those things where you have to realize, like, of course it won't work for you because it worked for them.
Yeah.
You need to find your own variation of those things and make those work for you instead, because everyone's got their own style. Everyone's got their own thing, and what might work for somebody will not work exactly the same for you.
Very true.
And so it's one of those things that you just have to, like, take a step back and realize, like, it's okay if not everything works for you, but you got to put in the time and the work to find what does. Because a lot of times people use that as their excuse to, like, well, I guess this is just how it is. And you're like, no, fight for it a little bit. Like, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be something that just happens to you. Nothing just happens. You just happen to fall into this business. No, you researched it first.
Yeah.
You got the licenses that you needed before you really even had a client
Got
yet.
the spreadsheets.
There you go. And the Google Docs.
The Google Docs, yeah.
Like, we prepare for these things. So don't be afraid to fight for it, because there will be growing pains, but you can't get, like, distracted by them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just got to have to push through.
For sure.
And keep moving.
Yeah, that's great advice. So you spoke about your parents and just coming from an entrepreneurial family. My next question is about influential people in your life. If you could name a few of them and in what ways they've influenced you.
Yeah, well, definitely my husband, because very similar to you, my husband has a lot of opinions and he'll give them. And I'm like, nobody asked you. How dare you talk to me? And then I'm like, but wait, can you say that one more time?
Right. Please, let me get a notepad. I'm old school. I'm old. Let me get a pen.
Can you just like be quiet just for a second though, so I can like get a pen?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And they take it. They're they're great.
They're so patient.
Shout out to the partners behind the business owners.
Yes, because we're a different breed.
Yeah.
We just are.
Yeah.
But he has been huge in like the development of Oasis, where he'll like notice something I'm getting frustrated about. And he's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, what do you mean? Why am I doing that? He's like, don't you have an assistant? Ask Desi to help you. Like, ask for help?
No.
What do you mean?
Never.
You know, like he's just very in tune with what the business is doing and how I'm doing with the business. And so definitely Rob, love you, babe.
That's great.
Doing great.
Yeah. While managing his own career, right?
Yes.
I mean, I find myself, my husband will be working and I go in, I've got plans for something I want to build and I know he's busy, but I'm expecting, and I'm taking audience with you right now. So I don't know what you're working on.
Full attention, please.
I need your attention here. I need you to, hear me out. So they're really great at balancing their own work and also helping
our
us with
insanity.
ours. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so your husband?
Yes. Also, the Brain Trust. I have this group of friends, Megan and Carly. Carly is a very accomplished author.
Okay.
Megan is a very accomplished podcaster and like community builder.
Wow.
And we meet every single month and we talk about our businesses. And we talk about what it's like to be women in business. And we just confide in each other because I feel like one of the biggest myths of like entrepreneurship is that it's always glamorous.
Yeah.
When really half the time you feel like a failure.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you're fighting this imposter syndrome day in
all the
and
time.
day out, and it's exhausting.
It is.
And there are very few people that understand that. And so building a community of like fellow business owners, but especially fellow female business owners, I think is so valuable.
Yeah.
And so they are like that second group of just like every month, so consistent, like praying for each other, lifting each other up, asking like, hey, I got this opportunity to do XYZ. How do you think I should price this?
Yeah.
Should I even be involved in something like this right now? Because we know how each other's businesses function. And so it's just really good to have almost like a sounding board with people that you trust, that you don't have to like, not gatekeep is not the right word, but like make it, you don't have to sugarcoat anything. You could be like, I feel like a failure as a wife. And they'd be like, well, you're not. And here's why.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we love our businesses, but our businesses are not our whole lives.
No.
You know, we have families, we have relationships, we have volunteer things. We do a lot besides own a business.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just need people who get it.
That's nice. Yeah. I find with a lot of my friends, I don't think they understand what I do.
Right.
They don't even have an understanding of it.
They just know you work all the time.
Yeah, they don't even know. And actually, I think a lot of my friends think I'm not working all the time.
Right.
Like I don't know what they think I do.
Yeah.
And so trying to have a conversation about what's stressing me out or what's, challenging, what's going on.
Yeah.
I can't even have that conversation because I need to get you to the point where you even understand what my job is.
Right, exactly.
So that's really nice that you have two friends that you're just already there and you can have those conversations and help each other. The brain trust. Is that what you call each other?
That's what we call it. That's what the group chat is. Group chat is named. Yeah,
I love it. Okay. The brain trust. I don't know. Are you accepting members? Because
I'm not sure.
You might need to consult. Yeah, I need something like
there
that.
There might be something in the works there. We'll see.
So do they count as one person or do you have another person that you want to mention?
They count as one person.
Okay, so that's one entity. So who else?
And then my family. Okay. My family is just like one of the groups of people that no matter what's going on, there's always food to share and there's always opinions to be had.
Yeah.
And of course, sometimes those opinions, you're like, I really didn't need you to say that right now. I'm already feeling that failure. Thanks.
Right.
You know? But it's just nice to have, especially with my family, like my parents are immigrants. Like, my dad especially came from Trinidad. My mom is Puerto Rican, grew up in Puerto Rico, came to the States, and like having immigrant entrepreneurial parents is like a whole different ballgame, because they know what being in America is as like an opportunity and like what it did for their families and being able to come here. And so
the struggles that I'm sure that brought with it.
Oh, yes. And so they see their kids owning these businesses and all they feel is pride.
Oh, that's
and
wonderful.
it's just like such a good, safe place to go to be like, this is really hard. And they're like, we know. Yeah. We did it. We get it.
But you can do it, right? There's that encouragement.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I think those are like the three. I know most of them are groups, but those are the three that I'm like, those are the people.
Yeah. What do you do? You're talking about just the challenges and the difficulties and the stress. What do you do to manage the stress? I know you have, just from a business standpoint, you've got a team, you delegate, you have an assistant who's wonderful and helps you. But like for like self-care and just managing the stress of because you are the owner.
Yeah.
What are some things that you do to help with that?
I mean, honestly, full disclosure, I'm very bad at that part.
Are you?
Like,
Yeah.
I am. It is
I think
something
a lot of
that
us are.
Yes, I am still learning what that looks like and what that expectation should be for myself. Because we were talking about this before we turned the cameras on. But like, I would rather just answer the email right now. Doesn't matter what I'm doing.
It makes you feel better, doesn't it?
Yes. I'm like, oh, well, that's one task that's done.
That's
I'd rather just do it all right now.
Yeah.
But sometimes that is just not good for my brain, And so it's an area I'm still learning. I'm trying to have on hours and off hours. I think one of the biggest developments in my life so far has been do not disturb, turning on do not disturb during certain hours of the day.
I have to say there have been a few times where I've texted you and I've gotten the do not disturb. So it's interesting you say that. I might have to start doing that.
Yes, from like 7
But you always
PM.
answer me.
I do.
You do answer me, though.
You see, I'm still learning.
Yeah, I feel special. Because I know that sometimes you have answered me.
Yes, because it's like, if you hear the notification sound, and I'm neurotic this way. I change all the notification sounds so I know what they are without having to look at my phone.
Really?
So I have like the text message ding. I have a different sound for my emails.
Okay.
I have a different sound for different apps and all kinds of stuff. Like Instagram has a different sound, so that if my phone is across the room and I hear it go off, I know what just came in. I don't know from who, but I know that was an email. I should probably check
That's actually pretty genius.
It's a blessing and a curse.
It reminds me of, I'm older than you, but it reminds me of back in the day having a different song as a ringtone for each person. Yes. And I have to admit, I still do that for some people.
Right.
So you know who's texting you, who's calling you, and how to prioritize that.
Exactly. Like, oh, nope, that's so-and-so.
Right.
They'll leave a voicemail and I'll call
right.
them back later. Versus, oh, that's my husband. Give me a second. Let me answer the phone.
Oh, that's really smart.
Yeah. But the problem with that is that if I hear an email come in at 10 p.m., I'm going to answer it.
Sure.
And so I might schedule it to go out at 8 in the morning so I seem like a normal person who works during normal people hours. But I just can't stop myself. And so to exhibit some sort of self-control, I put on do not disturb. Okay. No notifications. If I happen to pick up my phone and look, which often happens when you text me later at night, I'll be like, oh, it's in. Let me talk to her. You know what I mean? Because I can then decide whether I answer today or not.
Sure.
So that has been my start to the self-care portion of it.
Well, that's all you need. You need a start. And then you go from there. You mentioned scheduling your emails. You're the second person I've talked to recently who does this.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not naive. I know it's a thing, but I've never actually done it. I think I'm so in the mode, when I was a teacher, and I taught high school kids. So, it's 11:47 and they have an essay due.
Due at 11:59.
At 11:59. And my email, the kids are emailing me,
Right.
I'm having a problem, I can't submit. And your heart goes out to them. So you're looking at your phone, knowing you have to get up at 5, one eye, all right, let me respond. I feel like I'm still in that mode.
Yeah.
But learning, those are emergencies, for kids.
Yes.
That's an emergency. And they're having a panic attack over this. Let me help.
Right.
Versus somebody just used the contact form on my website for a quote on a chaise lounge. That's not an emergency.
Right.
I don't have to handle that tonight. I can leave it for tomorrow.
Yes.
I like the idea of scheduling the emails though, because you really don't have to be present and in the moment doing that. So that's actually a really useful tool that I have to incorporate that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So where can people go to learn more about you? Not Facebook, as we've already
Definitely not
established. Not
Facebook.
yet. But it's coming.
Maybe soon. We'll see.
For sure, for sure.
I might just abandon Facebook, but who knows? OasisCoordination.com. That is our website, and Oasis Coordination on Instagram. So just at Oasis Coordination.
Okay, perfect. Is there a contact form on your website?
Yes. Okay. So there are quite a few pages on our website about us, the team, and a couple of other resources that we have there, like our preferred vendors, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or vendors that prefer Oasis at their, whatever. Either way, lots of pages, and then there's an inquire page.
I'm going to revisit the question
I've been thinking about this
at the beginning about, a signature cocktail, or it could be a mocktail that you feel just, I don't know, it just speaks to who you are and just the overall vibe of your business. So what would that be?
I feel like I would call it the Wild Oasis.
Wow. Okay.
That's pretty good, right?
It is really good. I love it. I love it. So what would be in this?
Definitely gin.
Okay.
I'm a gin person.
Are you?
I am.
Hence the gin and tonic?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is pretty good, too,
Thank you.
by the way.
It's
For
my
coming
first
out of a water bottle, this is delicious.
Water bottle gin and tonic. So definitely some gin.
Definitely gin, maybe some lavender or floral elements of
my
some,
gosh, you're fancy.
What do they call it? Like floral essence or whatever? I don't know what that means.
I have no idea wine gal, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, so what are we going to toast to? I like to end each podcast episode with a toast. What do you think we should toast to today?
To you getting an assistant.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm going to lean in so we can get our toast going.
Nice.
All right.